Brett, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you that you can share with us?
I think that there's plenty of inspiration and adrenaline in startups. So one thing I try to remember is one of my favorite quotes is we have to learn to want what we have, not have what we want. And so, there's ups and there's downs, and it's easy to take it personally. And I think sometimes we just have to be grateful for what we have.
So let's talk about Kumospace. Tell us, what does the product do? Who's it for? And what's the main problem you're helping to solve?
Yes. So Kumospace is a unified communications platform built for remote and distributed teams. So the idea is that you have all of your people and all of their conversations, and they're all in one place. And so every day people get up, they enter Kumospace, and there they have essentially it's like all in one Slack plus Zoom plus Loom plus Otter. It's kind of like if you think about like what HubSpot is to your sales and marketing stack for SMBs, Kumospace is that for your communication stack and focused on remote teams.
Can you give us a sense of the size of the business? Where are you in terms of revenue, number of customers, size of team?
We've got a few million users. We launched in 2020, and we are, seven-figure business again, which I guess we'll get to that. We got to $1 million in ARR in 2.5 months the first time around, and then immediately had to throw away that business and start again. Happy to talk about that. We're only 16 people, trying to keep it as lean as possible.
And I think you've raised $25 million to date.
Yeah, we're really lucky. We had a bold start, ventures from New York City, at Sim and Elliott as our seed investors that are old friends of ours. And then we had Lightspeed with Paul Murphy lead our Series A.
So the business was founded in 2020. I want to start with like where the idea came from, but maybe can you just tell us like what were you doing at the time? Because you do a lot of stuff and you got a lot of plates spinning. So what were you doing back then? And then sort of where did this idea come from?
Yeah, so I think you're alluding to, I also run a New York-based pre-seed, seed stage venture capital fund called Charge Ventures. We write sort of $250, $750 million checks into companies just getting off the ground, really focused on New York City. And I had been running that with my partner, Chris Sabachi, since 2015. And so that's still going. We're actually investing out of our third fund now. But it was 2020. The pandemic had just hit. I was doing a million Zoom calls a day. And I was thinking to myself, like, there has got to be something better than Zoom. If Zoom is the end of communications, then it's a very bleak future indeed. And so I used to run basically a monthly in-person networking event for Charge. And the idea was to get a bunch of, middle-aged farts together and, share deal flow and, angel investing opportunities. And when the pandemic hit, everyone said, why don't you bring that online? And I was like, well, I don't really want to give a Zoom presentation to 50 of my friends every month. That sounds pretty terrible. And so kind of realized that, wait, this is kind of weird. And even in 2020, there was no technology that enabled multiple people to congregate in real time online and have multiple different conversations in the same place. And so my co-founder at Kumospace, this guy Yang Mao, we've been friends for over a decade. He engineer, went to Princeton. We had built 2 companies together. So he built the Android app at my first company, Sonar, and then we were co-founders at a second company, Switch. And then he was just quitting Oscar. He'd run all basically consumer-facing technology at Oscar Health, which is $1 billion insurer, tech-based insurer out of New York City. And he was quitting in the middle of the pandemic, and he was sick of it. He was like, going to start a new company. And I was like, well, here's this problem. People can't meet online in real time and have multiple conversations in the same place, same time. And then he said, oh, okay, 2 weeks later, he came back with the prototype. And, as a VC, I see a lot of nascent technology, and usually you have to kind of squint at it really hard and say, well, maybe if it had this, or maybe if it, had a million users on it, there might be something more interesting here. But in the prototype that Yang built, which was, a very bare bones version of Kumospace, it was just pure audio. It didn't even have video at the time. We could tell that there was something about this idea of spatial audio, which was this idea that, if you're in proximity to each other in virtual space, you can hear each other. And if you're not, you can't, which is sort of how physical spaces work. And so, at the time, Yang was just going to run it, and I was happy he was going to have the idea. And then I was advising, and then I was going to angel invest, and then I was going to invest from the fund, and then the fund was going to lead. And then, right before things already had traction, it was moving, Yang's like, why don't you just get more involved? And so I felt very honored and was excited to do it because it had been 10 years since I had built a company, and this was the first opportunity that got me excited enough to get back off the bench and get back into the arena as an entrepreneur.
So you mentioned earlier that you guys got to the first million in ARR in what was it, like 2.5 months. How much later did that happen from the time that Yang had built this initial demo or prototype? And secondly, I want to dig into how did you get that kind of growth in just a couple of months?
Yeah, Yang built the prototype in May. We launched it, I think we first started discussing it in May, and we, launched it to the market in August. So pretty quickly afterward. And it just started growing organically. That's the nice part. It was inherently a viral product. People would share it. They were meeting. It was also during pandemic. No one had anything to do. So they're all excited about new things to explore online. And we raised our seed round that fall, basically, kind of Thanksgiving timeframe. So pretty quick, the Bullsheart guys I had known for 10 years. I'd always wanted to work with them, and they were really, great guys, very well respected seed investors. And, frankly, at the time, Kumospace wasn't even a SaaS product. It was really a consumer application. I mean, we had weddings in Kumospace, we had wakes in Kumospace, we had graduations and college recruiting, and people were using it as offices and lectures, and all over the place. So we just picked them because they were we know that they're the most founder-friendly investors in New York. And so then we built that next year, and we really figured out customer acquisition by the summer. We and happy to share about that, but we noticed we had a huge uptick in traffic one day, and we were like, where is that coming from? Like, oh, that came from TikTok. Wow, that's kind of weird. How do we replicate that? And so anyway, we figured out customer acquisition. We were growing, adding hundreds of thousands of MAUs a month. And at that point, that was going into the fall, and we kind of realized, well, let's throw in the afterburner, and while we're hyperscaling, let's turn on revenue. And so we turned on revenue, and in 2.5 months, we were over $1 million ARR. And that's, when we fundraised, everything was up and to the right. I think there's always a bit of a gambit when you're trying to fundraise, right? Because we sort of saw the way customer acquisition figured out, and we stepped on the gas, and we just started investing. And, we had early raised $3 million seed round, but we started, at one point we were spending $80,000 a month on customer acquisition to scale, which is kind of scary at the time, but that's how you do it. And the problem was that we didn't even see it, is that we turned on a subscription product, and people were using us to host virtual events, as particularly at the end of that year in Q4 2021. And they were hosting a lot of holiday parties in Kumospace. And the problem is that it was an episodic use case. It was not a daily use case. And so as fast as the revenue came, so came the churn with crazy fury. I think we churned, it was like 40% churn or something in a month. And so we thought about keep growing because we figured out the growth mechanism, but we were like, what is the point? So we actually ended up we shut down the events business, a few months later, and then sort of pivoted the business into the, what we call virtual office business that we have today, which is basically, a productivity suite for remote distributed teams. But that definitely sucked.
The first thing I want to understand is like you get to a point where you've hit 7 figures and you can see that there is a potential problem which is getting bigger and bigger with this, like you said, like this episodic use. How easy or hard was it to make the decision to pull the plug and say, we're going to do a reset? I imagine that most founders, especially if this is their first time, that's going to be an incredibly, incredibly difficult decision to make. So was it just as hard for you, or do you guys feel like because this wasn't the first time you were building a company, maybe you kind of had a cooler heads and were more rational about the decision? I don't know. I want to just understand that a bit more.
The problem is that initially when you're growing that fast, you don't actually, you can't actually tell. Like the churn is hidden at first is part of the problem. So we didn't even notice it immediately, right? Because we were growing so fast that the fact that some people were churning was not obvious, right? It was, it took a couple months to realize like, oh, okay. And, we're pretty nascent. We just launched, all the metrics weren't as tidy as they should have been. And, or as, they eventually will get to. But I think once the churn came, it was pretty obvious. I mean, I don't even know how a business like, Hopin, how they keep pushing on growth. I mean, they must have had just such demand that they, could ignore the churn and then keep growing. But it's, when your bucket is, it doesn't even have a floor in it. If you're trying to bring water back home with a cylinder, it's going to be pretty tricky. So I think for us, we had the balance sheet, and we're also lucky to have very supportive investors. I mean, I think they realize these guys. Paul Murphy is an entrepreneur himself. He built and sold a company called Dots in gaming, which is like very focused on customer acquisition and retention. And I think he knows well enough that like that was a game of finding someone to hold the bag, right? The only way that would have worked is a quick flip, and that was not what any of us were in it for. So I think as soon as we realized the problem, it became pretty obvious that we had to do something else.
So you go back to the drawing board, and you said you talked about this kind of this virtual office. Was this like mainly like a positioning thing, or did you have to like fundamentally change the product?
Well, so what happened was we actually were going to we've been a fully remote company, and we were scheduled to have our first company offsite. And, we're all going to meet in person. Maybe there was 10 of us at the time. And we were already very excited about it. It had been, a year and almost 2 years into the company. And this is right after we raised the money. And everyone got COVID. Everyone got Omicron. And so we were like, well, that's a bummer. But, luckily we were very well positioned to throw a virtual offsite because, we build virtual event software. So we threw a virtual offsite, and we sent out a survey to the team beforehand. And we said, what do you like about working in Kumospace? What do you hate about working in Kumospace? And so what they said they liked, they were like, we love working remotely. We love the flexibility it adds for our lives. We love our team. We love shipping code, building fast and, moving fast, bringing things. And what do we hate? Well, we find cross-departmental collaboration and communication really challenging. And we don't know our coworkers as well as we wish we did. And we don't know, it's hard to know who's around. And we kind of realized we had this sort of stupid epiphany moment where we said, wow, we have all the same problems as every other remote company out there in the world. And we make virtual event software. And so we said, you know what, we're just going to live in the product. We're going to literally live in Kumospace. And so then we just started dog fooding it, and that worked out pretty well because we immediately realized, okay, well, here are all the problems to, using Kumospace as a virtual office. And so that was the first 6 months of 2022. It was just kind of like building table stakes, which is like, doors, which enable private conversations, and statuses. So if someone's going to be there at their desk or not, or available, and kind of table stake stuff. And that's actually how we kind of transformed the product, was by forcing ourselves to use it in a certain way.
Got it. Okay, so you mentioned TikTok as an acquisition channel, and it kind of made sense when you were talking about the first version of the product and kind of being very consumer focused, and people doing weddings and whatever. But is TikTok still a growth channel for you today with the product as it is?
Yeah. So this is actually funny, because we have experimented with a bunch of different. So what happened initially was we were monitoring our traffic, and we had this crazy spike in traffic, and we realized, oh wow, we went viral on TikTok. We said, oh, well, what if we can manufacture that? So, influencer marketing, we got some influencers, and we realized, wow, like this works, but it's really labor intensive to just be reaching out to a bunch of influencers, negotiating with them, signing them up, getting them papered, getting them to create the content that we want, inspecting that, getting them to post that content, following up, and then paying people, right? And so we were like, wow, we actually need some tooling to do this. And so we, one of our portfolio companies that charge is called Grin, and they're a CRM for influencer marketing that basically helps that whole process I described. So we started using them, and we were able to scale up our influencer marketing from, maybe 5 posts a month to, I think at one point we're doing 60 or 70 with, one person managing it. And, what we realized is we had tried advertising, on LinkedIn and LinkedIn ads, and that's where you would think about doing marketing. But what we realized is that everyone's on TikTok. Like, it's the same people. The same people are using TikTok and LinkedIn. It's just the only difference is that getting in front of that person on TikTok is 1/10 of the cost as it is on LinkedIn, right? And so, we had all these prospective customers, CEOs of, SMBs and startups and VPs at big companies, and they were saying, where do you find us? And they'd say, oh, on social media. But they didn't want to say TikTok, but they were on TikTok. And so we realized it's like, well, if you can just create content for that person on TikTok, I think we think of it as like B2C to B2C to B marketing, right? Like you get in front of that consumer, and then they bring you into their business. And so that's, I think, something that we're coaching a lot of our portfolio companies in charge on how to use that technique. I think it's pretty effective.
Okay, so 2 questions about that. That's like super interesting. Number one is like, what type of content were you creating that actually worked on TikTok? It's going to be very different to the kind of thing that I imagine you would try on LinkedIn. And secondly, how do you target these people? Like on LinkedIn, it's pretty easy, right? You can target by company, by job, by whatever. But how do you do that on TikTok?
So it's funny. It's kind of like the answer is the other question. So I'll do the latter first. So you target based on the content that you create. So you create work content, you create interesting content about work, or, because if you're a professional, you can laugh at a joke about the office or about your Zoom culture, anywhere, right? Like it's just black humor for a lot of us desk jockeys. And so we would create, content with people with about, working, about the ridiculousness of it, or just about the productivity of Kumospace, or about it as an alternative to being in the Brady Bunch box of Zoom. So we would just create that content. And it's nice because Kumospace is a video chat product. That's a big part of our product. And so the video nature of our product showed really well on TikTok, right? Because it's a video medium, and we have a video product. If I told you what a virtual office is, it's pretty hard. You're like, what is a virtual office? I don't know. But I can show you on video very easily. So there was a very nice product channel fit right? I don't think people think about that enough, which is like, okay, what is the right channel that my product shows off its best attributes in? And so we're a video-based product. That's an advantage over us. Kumospace is far more interesting and engaging product than most SaaS products. Most SaaS products probably wouldn't show well on video, right? But Kumospace does. So it was a way for us to actually express the product way better than we could in a sales call or in an email. So I think there's great product channel fit there. And then in terms of targeting, that's the nice part about TikTok, right? Because everyone's like, oh, do you have to have the right influencers, or do you, get the right audience? Well, that's not how TikTok works, actually. TikTok works by having the For You page, which is perfectly algorithmically generated. And it's based on what that type of content that user likes, right? So if the user is engaging with work or focused content, right? TikTok will get our work focused content, if it's good, in front of them. We don't have to worry about that.
I didn't realize that. So it's in many ways, it's like what you just said at the start of this. It's like the targeting is really about creating the right type of content and just letting the algorithm take care of the rest.
It's very counterintuitive, because I think a lot of people my age, right, millennials, they are so stuck in this like social network kind of mindset, and they're like, oh, it's about their followers and who their who their followers and their fans. Like, well, TikTok doesn't care.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Okay, so you mentioned also earlier about the tailwinds with the time around COVID and people going crazy and looking for all kinds of tools, and then how that helped you grow the first version of Kumospace. When you kind of went out with this virtual office product, I think it was probably like on the timeline, like probably late 2022, I'm guessing. And probably things are changing, right? I mean, things are sort of calming down. People are doing maybe a little less online. Some people are starting to head back to the office. How did that affect you guys?
Obviously, we launched and we had the full tailwind of the pandemic, right? Everyone, all the internet stocks were getting pulled forward, and we realized so much was possible, right? I think before the pandemic, you realize, wow, I can run my whole business off, online. That's crazy. I would have never expected that to be possible. And then sort of people were surprised at the upside. And I think a couple of years into it, everything was working, but there's kind of this nagging feeling from a lot of people, that maybe something wasn't working, or there was kind of a long-term cost of running your business, fully remote, right? And so you have all these kind of managers that have nice houses by the office in the nice part of town that we're bringing everyone back to the office. Oh, miss the office. We miss the brainstorming or the, conviviality of the office. And, I miss the visibility of seeing my team and the mentorship that young people have when they can see their boss and get connected with them, and the quick collaboration that you can have when you can tap someone on the shoulder and get an answer to your question. And, the culture that, you can create when you're having multiple interactions with people over the course of the day, right, across your organization. And so in 2023, I think it was like, okay, we're going back. It's return to the office. And so 2023 was all about this narrative about return to the office, which obviously was challenging for Kumospace, right? Because, if they're returning to the office, why do I need this tool? And so I'm happy to report that, at least for us, that didn't happen. So, 2023 was all about people trying to return to the office. Turns out that didn't happen. Commercial real estate utilization is still 50% of what it was pre-pandemic, and it's stubbornly not budging. People are working, still working from home 30%, 40% of the time. You have the, hybrid arrangements, which it turns out that people, one of the reasons people are so productive during the pandemic is because it's an indisputable fact that people they work longer and they get more IC work done when they're working from home, right? Because they're not bothered by, people all day, every day, and they don't have the commute. So they end up, working from their desk, at different hours, different times. And so what I think everyone realized, like, oh crap, they're not going back to the office. And so actually at the tail end of last year, people started realizing, oh, or, this isn't happening. Maybe I should just actually fix the problem instead of trying to just revert time back to what it was. And so we actually had, our best quarter ever in Q4 23, I think, because people kind of realized, okay, we actually have to get some dedicated tooling and technology that solves the problems other than just forcing everyone back into this suboptimal solution and putting them back into a box. But to your question earlier, you actually were saying, hey, was it hard to make this decision to cut this business, right? When we had churn? Well, that wasn't hard because it was very obvious. What far more challenging was, the second half of this year where it was like, crap, like, is this even a thing? Is remote work going to be a thing at all? Particularly when all the headlines were saying everyone's going back to the office. That was a much more difficult decision, and having belief that, like, you know what, we know that this is better. We know that this is a better solution, even if people, had been hesitant to try it beforehand because they thought everything was going to go back the way it was. That took actually discipline to stay the course.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, obviously, I know you may be a little biased about this, but what do you think the future of remote looks like in the next few years? Is like, are we still going to have companies and managers like trying to get people back into the offices, or are we kind of getting to a point now where people are just accepting that this is the new reality, and maybe some companies like such as yours, you might be 100% remote, and others are going to be more of a hybrid type, situation, and you need to kind of plan and optimize for both rather than, expecting everybody to be in the office 100% of the time.
Yeah, there's no going back to 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It's just not happening. Like, people appreciate and value the flexibility far too much. And so the problem is that, your best employees are the ones that can and will work from anywhere when they want to, right? So, if you're a gigantic, hyperscaler, and maybe you have the leverage, or if you're a finance firm and you can literally pay people 5x to their typical salary to come to the office, like, sure, those companies might drag people in the office. They tend to be small, human capital, small with very well-paid people. But for everyone else, the truth is that the vast majority of our job can be done from our computer anywhere, right? Like, and I've been, working on the internet for 20 years, and one rule is that anything that can be done over the internet will be done over the internet over enough time. We thought selling books sounded crazy 20 years ago, and much less selling cars and hiring people and working, not fully from, anywhere in the world, right? But that's all come. So I'm not betting against that. I think you said it correctly. Like, the world will be hybrid for some time to come. But the truth is that there are already large departments in companies that were already remote. Like, we see this all the time. I mean, I talk to all these financial companies, big banks, and their IT departments have been remote and distributed for 20 years, right? They've been taking advantage of this. And so I just think that will continue along, an accelerated process. And, any function that can be spread all over the world for various cost and resiliency reasons, it will be.
How do you describe Kumospace to somebody, like, because it's not a Zoom, it's not like some of these other products. And I think that's maybe the first thing that people maybe assume when you talk about, virtual office and kind of a video product. But what is it like? Is this a new category? Is this like, how easy or hard is it for people to understand? I mean, obviously, if they're watching these TikTok videos, probably they get it quickly. But how easy is it to position and sort of articulate the message about Kumospace to somebody if you're talking to them or maybe looking at another platform?
Yeah, I think that is one of the challenges, I think, of a category creation, right? Is that you are trying to describe something that someone has never seen or experienced. We therefore don't try to sell features so much as, so benefits or a new way of working. And the nice part is that all those things I just described to you, which I would say, visibility, accountability, collaboration, real-time collaboration, and kind of culture. So the reason you use a virtual office is actually the exact same reason that you might have returned to the physical office, right? Is to get those back, those benefits and features. The only difference is that we are, a software solution that costs a tenth as much and has all sorts of benefits like software, which is that you can remodel our office in a few minutes. You can add an additional floor for $0. You can get analytics about your team and who's around and who's connecting, and knowing who knows who and who to ask the right question to instantly, and a bunch of benefits that you could never get in a physical office. So I think that the world has been given this false dichotomy of, okay, well, you can either be really productive and in an office, but miserable and have a commute and don't get to see your kids and see their soccer games, or you can have good lifestyle but you can't really get stuff done, and you can't be productive, and you can't be high performing. And I think we just believe in a third way, which is waking up and going surfing, and then coming back and being at your desk at 8:30 and closing that deal, right? I just don't see that it's not. Ray Dalio has a nice thing. He's like, yeah, anytime I was presented with two options I didn't like, I just look for a third.
Yeah, love that. Now, aside from TikTok, how else are you acquiring customers today? What's working for you? I think when we were talking a little bit earlier, you mentioned conferences. Like, is that a way that you're acquiring customers today?
We tried to get PR. We had hired 3 different PR agencies trying to figure out, okay, help us. How can we have someone help get our word out, get press? This is a new innovative solution. How do we get this? And honestly, it was a disappointment every time. They just a lot of talk, a lot of creating empty documents and not getting anything done. And then, to my marketing team's credit, Drew Moffat heads our marketing, and we've got some other great folks in there. They just sort of took PR in-house, and PR it's kind of a hustle game. And so, we got pretty good at stacking our PR. So we would get one, speaking gig, and then we would basically send that to a bunch of anyone else that was having a conference. We'd get a list of conference people hosting conference. We built the conference. We'd reach out to all of them. Then we'd reach out to everyone else who was speaking at that conference and ask them if they had another, if they needed someone else on the panel. And then once we get one, speaking event, we would try to get another, we get on another panel. And then once we were a speaker, then we could reach out to all the other speakers, and particularly the ones that are potentially interesting customers. And then we would set up meetings with them. And so whenever I go to a conference, my marketing and PR department is essentially acted as BDRs. And I go there and have 30-minute meeting for 8 hours. So, 16 meetings a day for the conference, just lined up. And, then making sure that those get passed back to our, sales team, and they can pick up the baton. And that is it took us a while to get there, but that is an effective way of running a conference playbook. And then, you kind of set up some dinners with prospective customers, at night, or breakfast in the morning. And for 2 days, that you get pretty good bang for your buck.
I think when most people think about events, we go into like, okay, do we need a booth? How are we going to promote our product and so on? But actually just thinking about it as a way just to set up meetings back to back, it sounds like so obvious when you think about it.
I feel like, people talk a lot about hustling and startup land. I think hustling just means emailing people you don't know.
Right. Yeah. I want to talk about product-led growth and your views on that, and then we will wrap up and get onto the lightning round. So, yeah, I mean, I know you and I were having a little bit of a chat about PLG before we started recording. How do you think about that? How is it working for you in terms of Kumospace? I
think product-led growth is obviously amazing. It's been a bit idealized by the venture capitalists, talking about it. And, we all have Dropbox and Slack examples. But I think there's this false dichotomy between, okay, I'm either product-led and the product is just selling itself, or I'm sales-led and, it's all outbound and you're driving pipeline. And the reality is, as with most things in business, it's not so clean. And I think we realize is like, we have a highly viral product. We had people coming in, from TikTok and marketing, and people signing up and using the product, and so it's like, very easy to say on the superficial level, oh, this is like a PLG product, right? But I would say we learned pretty quickly that Kumospace is not a perfect PLG product for a number of reasons. We, the end user might pick us up, but honestly, the sale goes through the team manager or a lead or VP or CIO or CEO or COO at a smaller company. And so it's a bit of a top-down sale, right? So I think true PLG product is like the end user uses it and is willing to pay for it themselves and put it on their card, their personal credit card and their corporate credit card. And then you get a bunch of those, and then, you metastasize inside the business, and then, you try to roll up, right? Like, so I think a lot of people try to fit themselves in the PLG because that's what venture capitalists want. But in reality, that's actually not what they are. And so in our case, though, it's a hybrid, right? In the sense that we are good at getting marketing distribution. We're good at getting in front of users. We're great at getting people to sign up for accounts, right? But the question is, when does the sales motion begin, right? And so, we had to move where we put our sales touch points in our funnel. We tried all up and down our funnel before we settled in just the right place. We started off just building the product and having sales bring in beta customers and drop them in. And we didn't even want to think about distribution because, we just wanted to build a core product. Then we said, okay, we want to be PLG. So we're going to put sales at the very bottom underneath product. Once they basically have already signed up, salespeople will help them. It's like, well, that didn't work at all. Then we were like, okay, wait, maybe we need to, our sales assist customers are, spending more money and are higher likely to close. So we said, oh, well, let's just make it so you have to talk to sales. You can't even use the product before you come in. Well, that was a disaster because people didn't understand our product. Like, for the reasons I said, they needed to at least see it before they even knew if they wanted to talk to sales. And so we realized that the perfect place for us was right after people create a account in Kumospace. We realized that was the best time to talk to them, but talk to them in Kumospace, not with an email, not with a lifecycle customer email, but actually go and meet them in our product. And so we call this drop-ins, and that's when people, sign up for a space, Kumospace, and when they're in their Kumospace, we get a little Slack notification, and then we drop, and then we see that, and then we send our BDR, well, actually our product specialist, in, and he just knocks on their space, says, hey, this is Phil from Kumospace, just checking in, seeing how you're, enjoying your Kumospace. Can we help you get set up? Are you having any challenges with that? And that is, a very native channel. Again, this is sort of product sales channel fit, right? And so it's like, what's the right channel and touch point for your salespeople to connect about your product? So it turns out for us, it's in the product, obviously. And that took some time, but it's been highly effective. Customers are very grateful when they're getting to get this personalized service, right? Even from a company that has millions of users.
It feels like a bit of a strange experience. I mean, when you describe it, it sounds so obvious and again, so organic and natural. But then I wonder, like, if I was signing up for similar, let's go back to like Zoom, like people understand Zoom, right? And so if I was like signing up for Zoom and I get online and suddenly some dude at Zoom is trying to start a meeting with me, I'd just be like, what the? How have people reacted to that?
I mean, look, it definitely felt uncomfortable to us too when we started. But the truth is that meeting people in your product, if you have their best intentions and you are trying to deliver value to them and you're trying to help them get the most value, we have a new product because people have never seen it before, anything like it before. So like, of course they're going to need help. Of course, there's so much. Imagine setting up an office, a physical office. There's so much goes into that. It's not a one-man job, right? And so we got to provide the people who cared enough about us to sign up, create an account, create a space. We want to be there for them and give them as much support as possible. And so I think it all depends on the relationship that you have, with your customer. And I think, meeting them where they need the help is really the anecdote, and meeting them in the most natural way that your it shine, makes your product shine, I think is what's important.
Love it. Love it. Okay, we should wrap up. Let's get on to the lightning round. I've got 7 quick fire questions for you. So just try to answer them as quickly as you can. What's one of the best pieces of business advice you've received?
Time kills deals.
What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Endurance, which is the story of Shackleton's failed attempt to cross the Antarctic, is my recommended book if you are in a low time in your startup and you don't think you can go any further. Break the glass and read Endurance.
Great recommendation. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Empathy for customers.
What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
I think I have to say Kumospace here, huh?
Well, what's a new or crazy business idea you'd love to pursue if you had the time?
I think that generative AI for new social applications to not mediate, but enhance connections between real humans is a big opportunity.
I agree. What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I'm learning how to climb mountains, but I'm afraid of heights.
And finally, what's one of your most important passions outside of your work?
Well, I'm calling you from Costa Rica, where hopefully I will be surfing later today.
I'm jealous. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Brett. It's been awesome. I know it took a little bit of time and effort for both of us to get this set up. So I'm grateful that we were eventually able to do it and have this conversation. If people want to learn more about Kumospace, they can go to kumospace.com. And if you want to check out Charge, you can go to charge.vc. And if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just hit me up on LinkedIn and reference Ober's podcast.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I wish you and the team the best of success and enjoy the surfing.
Thank you, sir. Wishing you the same. And let's get after in 2024.
Cheers.